All right. Thanks for that, Lou. Okay, I think we better make a start. Okay. Right, I'm just going to share my screen with everybody. Tell you where we're going tonight. Okay, right, I'm going to just make you all disappear for a minute, I think. Bye. Okay, right, so week 20, as Heather said, moving on to module 9. So just to talk about what we're going to do tonight, I'm afraid, I apologise in advance, it's going to be a lot of talking from me, and I will give you a 5-minute breather in the middle, and me, because there's quite a lot to get through, but we'll be practicing tomorrow. So going to start off with a bit of a recap of what we did in module 8, just a bit of a reminder of what you've just covered. Moving on to what we're going to do in module 9, which we're going to be doing over the next 2 weeks. I'm going to start off today by talking about 33 techniques that you can integrate within your sessions. Now, don't expect you to have 33 techniques in every session, obviously, and some of these techniques we won't have actually even got to, but it's just a sort of a bit of a revision of some, and sort of a bit of a heads up for what's coming as well. So I'm going to run through those with you first. Going to just quickly cover autogenic relaxation, and that is very, very quick. And then we're really going to focus on weight loss and a practical program for working with weight loss. And as with all sort of issues, as you know, there is a set way that you can work with them, but every person's created different, and everybody's solutions and problems are different as well. So, you know, what I'm going to suggest isn't always going to be exactly the way that you might do it, but it is a very good technique for doing it. And it just reminds you what you need to go through in a basic sort of weight loss session. Okay. So quick recap on what we did in module 8. Obviously we talked about waking hypnosis, waking suggestions. You did a bit of work with that as well. You did some practice and did some exercises with that. We talked about habits and addictions, which you might find you use for your practice tomorrow, depending on who wants to lose weight and who doesn't. So we'll come to that later. But we focused on the difference between habit and addictions, and how if you can get somebody to see what they perceive perhaps as an addiction as a habit, then it becomes something that is much more preferable and feels much more open to something that they can change. So like something they have more control over. So we really focused on that, particularly in relation to the stop smoking, as in it's not an addiction, it's a habit, and the approach to take with that, which is a much easier approach, because it's something they can bring about themselves. We worked on the not stop smoking sessions last week. You actually did some practice on that, and we had a fairly specific structure to work through. And if you remember, the biggest focus really about that was that chat before, really using that very detailed discussion to really take people through the whole not smoking process, to the point where really before you even did the hypnosis, you felt like they were ready to give up. But obviously we also discussed that sometimes that might not be the case, and you might look at it slightly differently and look at, say, one step at a time, perhaps going down a certain amount of cigarettes a day and taking it over a longer period of time. But we looked at the ideal of doing that so that you've literally got that person in front of you. You've covered all of those different sort of points that are really going to make the difference, and you feel quite certain by the time you actually deliver that hypnosis to them with all those sort of positive suggestions that they've really given up before they're even there. We looked at a couple of techniques, which I think most of you certainly use the fork in the road or split path as a technique to actually aid that process. So looking at the aversion and the sort of positive together to give them that contrast. I don't know how many of you used it, but certainly we looked at the red stop sign as another possible aid that you could use, which also could be used for what we're talking about today. Quickly touched on advertising regulations, mainly in respect to not smoking, but a lot of what we talked about there really relates to anything that we do, you know, about not making specific guarantees, and that it's always a two-way process. Again, all of this is in your handbook, so you can always refer back to that. Also did the eye gaze induction to use at the end of the session to actually reinforce those positive mantras before the client leaves. So that's quite a lot we did in Module 8 over the last few weeks. So moving on to Module 9, what we're going to cover in the next 2 weeks. Basically this week we're going to look at the 33 ideas or techniques that you can use and find useful during your sessions, and some of them are going to be very familiar with you, so some of them will be quite a reminder. And then to move on to looking at how you can really help people to lose weight, and looking at a very specific program for doing that. And that's where we'll stop today, and then we'll pick up on the practice for that in the session tomorrow. Next week we're going to look at a list of what we call, or what Andrew calls, Andrewisms, so lots of useful phrases to use within the sessions, and again some of those will be quite familiar to you because we will have been using them. And then to look at working with grief, and we have quite a nice particular sort of script that we can use for that, which you could use and adapt in different ways. So that's really what we got planned for next week. So this module again over 2 weeks. Okay, so starting off with these techniques that we're going to use in the sessions, and as I said, a lot of these will become very familiar. It's basically a list, and sometimes it's a good idea to just keep that list nearby. So if you are coming to a bit of a standstill with a client and you're not quite sure where to go, it just gives you a little bit of a sort of a prompt for where you might be able to go with that client if you're coming to a bit of a dead end. So quite a good idea to keep some of these with you, and they're all listed in your handbook. I'm just going to go through those with you first. Do, you know, as we're going through, if anybody's got any questions, do sort of pipe up and ask. Okay, especially ones that we've been through, there might be questions that you want to ask. Okay, so starting off with the library model, we used that right at the very beginning. We introduced that whole idea of the library model to you as a way of understanding what's really going on. But it's actually quite a nice way that you can sort of use to explain to the clients. You can use it as a visualization. There's lots of different ways that you can use the library model. And it's all about sort of the reminder of how we're changing beliefs, getting rid of old ones and writing a new sort of perspective for that client. So if you've got something that's belief related, which most things are at the end of the day, it can be quite a nice way to go if you feel that fits with your client and their particular issue. Parts therapy, a couple of weeks ago, obviously we had quite a good go with that. I think some of you enjoyed parts therapy, some it's not for you. It's one of those things, I think it's quite a complex one to do sometimes, but something where we use when people might have some sort of conflict over something, and they really are, you know, sort of, you know, for example, I had a client the other day who is always guilty about relaxing, but he actually needs to relax so that he can work harder, but he's got this conflict of, I want to feel free to relax, but actually I've got this work pulling me on the other side, and parts therapy ended up being a very good route for him. So parts therapy, where you invite those sort of aspects of that person to sort of come to a sort of almost like a mini meeting where they are acting as the facilitator, or you're the facilitator, I suppose, but technically they are as well. So parts therapy can be used in many situations, and again for you to judge as you go and as you're talking to your client to try and work out whether you think this might be a way to go. And occasionally, sometimes it will just spontaneously happen. You know, I've certainly had sessions where a client sort of almost goes into that sort of way of being, so we're actually running a parts session without actually intending it. Regression, we've done a lot of regression and we'll probably continue to do so. Regression is a very useful technique, particularly as so many of our sort of issues go back to sort of the past in some way. And it's getting them to use, remember, that past present tense to talk about what's going on as if it's really happening again. They're reliving that experience so that they can go back to that unhelpful feeling, sometimes happy feeling, as obviously we regress to the happy place as well, but go back to that feeling and get to the root of what the problem really is and re-experience it in the hope that they can create an ad reaction from that, and actually then let go and release that. So regression, you'll find as a therapist, you'll use quite a lot. So regression, we've done, as I said, quite a lot of that, and we'll be doing more. The swish. Now, the swish technique is something we haven't covered yet, and we will be coming to that when we move more into NLP. It can be a very, very useful technique to get rid of fears and phobias. So I won't spend too much time on that now, because that's something we're going to come to, but just another one there to go in your toolbox, which you might look at on your crib list and actually think, oh, maybe swish might be the way to go with this. Fast rewind, also in the same sort of category. We'll cover that when we come to NLP. So again, it's a good one for fears and phobias. Positive visualization. Now, we use this in lots of ways. Obviously, we can use it for inductions just to get the client really relaxed. But it also can be very good even in things like weight loss, if you like, when they want to really see that new them. And how they might be and how they want to see themselves in the future. So sort of creating that sort of step into that new person feeling, and can be very, very helpful. Performance, just visualizing that person performing, could be singing, dancing, could be sport, whatever it is, public speaking. Really, really helpful. Again, anything like that where they really want to sort of kind of visualize that image of that new identity and to visualize themselves almost stepping into that person and creating that situation. You could even do that sometimes when you might regress, and you can sort of, what I quite often say with clients, to reframe that situation. So almost as if it happened differently. So they reframe that whole situation using a positive visualization rather than the negative visualization that they actually experienced. Negative visualization, obviously, we get quite a lot of that, and that's used very much so when we think about the split path or the fork in the road, because you are creating a very negative situation when they walk down that left path. I think some of you had some real fun with that, but to actually create something that they're really quite afraid of. I've certainly had clients come out of that and they're really sort of very, very upset by what they see as a possible future if they don't actually change that behavior. So negative visualization is almost like a threat, I suppose, an aversion. And it can be used for aversion if you want somebody to stop doing something, to make that donut look like, I don't know, like it's got mud on it or something else. Negative visualization can work for some people, but it's not for every situation, obviously. Expressing the unexpressed. We've used this quite a lot. Very, very effective when we regress back, particularly when you've got something using things like the inner child, so you can give back those feelings. Give back, sorry, that's a different one, sorry. Expressing the unexpressed. Say what it is that you didn't get that chance to say back then. And quite often that is done with the assistance of that older you coming back to an inner child. So those two quite often come together, but it doesn't have to be. It could be a situation where you might go back to something that happened just a few years ago. You didn't actually handle it the way you wanted it to, and you might just want to express what you really wanted to express. So it's releasing those sort of unprocessed emotions, if you like, that you didn't let go of. So a very, very powerful one, expressing the unexpressed, and used a lot. I certainly find I use this quite a lot. Powering the inner voice, very much about creating those positive mantras, allowing the client to actually really believe that positive inner voice. So I really can, I am a good person now, I can move on, really sort of believing inside and powering that inner voice to help them to create positive mantras for themselves, which you can sort of use, especially on their way out of the trance, if you like, coming back to this time, this now, bringing those sort of really positive mantras with them that usually they may have created themselves. The Sedona method, we haven't looked in detail at this, but there is one technique that we've looked at, the fist of sand, which kind of really is the same sort of feeling, but we will go into the Sedona method in a little bit more detail. But it's all about letting go, letting something be. So it might be letting go of an old habit. It might be letting go of anger that you might have felt for somebody over a very long period of time, or letting go of sadness, letting go of tension, anxiety, whatever it is. It's about letting something go, not necessarily trying to solve it. And the fist of sand technique that we did a couple of weeks ago is all about that sort of letting something go. So that's kind of in that sort of bracket, but we will go into that a little bit more when we get to it. So that's the Sedona method. Hypnoeasy therapy. This is one we're going to do in much more detail and spend a bit of time on this, which is something that's really good for pain relief, and incorporating the saliva method as well, which won't make much sense to you at the moment, but that just enhances the sort of effect of what you're doing. So it's almost like swallowing it down. That can be really, really good. As I said, if you've got somebody in the group that's got a backache, or they've got a continuing chronic pain or something like that, or IBS, I've certainly used it for that. So that can be quite a useful technique. And it might be something that you might use alongside other things as well. So that might not be the only thing that you would use. That might be a further session down the line when you've worked through some other stuff with your client, maybe, or maybe not. You know, it varies. The blow away technique, probably similar to the fist of sand in a sense, that you are just for now, just blowing away those thoughts and feelings. And it is something that you do use a lot with children. And we will specifically focus on working with children a few modules down the line. But that can be quite a nice and simple way to do it. And actually the actual sort of feeling of just blowing something away, you get that sort of feeling of relaxation as you do that as well. So it just feels like a sense of relief. So there is kind of a physical effect to the blow away technique as well. But all again about release. So similar to that Sedona method in a way of letting something go. The hero, the client having their own hero. Again, I think this is used a lot for children because they might have their own superhero or their own YouTube hero, or somebody that, you know, they look up to, a singer or something like that. But it's about having, instead of perhaps having that older them that you have in the inner child, they might have their superhero with them. We do a nice, when we get to children, there's a nice little sort of scenario where they go in the time machine and perhaps take their superhero with them and go back to that moment in time, but they've got their hero with them to help them. So that can be a really good one. Occasionally you'll get that with an adult as well, where you've got somebody they really respect that might be their hero, who might be there by their side helping them, and you might want to use that idea as well. Mantras, obviously, positive sayings. I think we've done quite a lot on that now. So positive sayings that are sort of relevant to that client, but specifically relevant to them. So it's really important that those mantras come from them. We don't give them to them, that we try to get them to develop those themselves. And a lot of that we did by using things like the don't want, do want, and just the whole questioning process to really understand what is important to the client themselves. The eye gaze mantra, we did a little bit of that last week in relation to the smoking, but that's when you're looking at your client in the eyes, and it gives you a sort of an inkling of where they really are on that particular situation. So when they say that sort of positive statement, if you like, you can start to see how much resistance there may still be there with them as to how comfortable they are with it. And so it gives you a little bit of an inkling of what more work you might need to do, or maybe actually they'll be at a stage when you've had a really good session where actually they start by the third time of saying it to be quite comfortable with that particular positive suggestion. Anchors. Anchors we will come to in a bit more detail when we move on to NLP, but it's about accessing a feeling by doing, it could be a physical thing. You know, the classic one that people talk about is that holding the thumb and the forefinger together whenever they feel a certain way. But there's lots of different things that can be used. And again, this will very much depend on what works for your client. And all of this is going to come from you understanding what works for them and what doesn't really. But again, that can be a very useful thing if somebody starts to feel anxious. You know, perhaps they're going to the dentist and they do a certain thing when they go there, and it almost becomes a bit like a scenario they go through in order to make them cope better with that particular situation. Performance of any sort. I believe Elvis Presley was supposed to have had a sort of scenario that he followed as he walked up to the stage, that he would follow that every time, and that was kind of his anchor to get him actually onto the stage. So anchors can be really, really good, and they just kind of, they're a way that you can kind of bring into, you know, at the end of a session, that any time that you might feel a certain way, that you'll remember this particular thing, and you know, for example, hold your thumb and your forefinger together, take a deep breath, and you know, things will feel differently. But there can be a range of things. Healing light, relaxing, calming, healing light, useful for anxiety and pain, confidence. Actually hypnobirthing and things like that as well, or anything where you might be facing something where you might need to feel that you've got that sort of that healing light there. And actually, yeah, I think it might be Sarah actually that does a really lovely induction where she uses this idea of a sort of a healing light that kind of helps you to relax even in just the induction. So that can be a really, really nice way to go with that. The control room. We haven't done this yet, and again, we will come to this a little bit later. That can be very useful for anxiety, but particularly for pain as well, or something that continually happens. I know the control room's used quite a lot for tinnitus. So, you know, where people have got continuous ringing in their ears. So it's a way of creating a situation where in effect the client is turning down that anxiety or that pain, or in the case of tinnitus, turning down that noise. So the control room is quite a widely used technique for that sort of thing. So another technique. Okay, disassociation. Now, this can be used in a number of ways. I know sometimes the way that I've used that is if a client is in a particularly painful situation, it might be a way to get them to almost stand back from that as if they were watching it, or rise above it. So they're actually watching that situation, they're not experiencing that particular feeling at that particular time. And as you've probably gathered from some of the people you've worked with already, some people do naturally disassociate, and we actually sometimes want to get them to associate with that particular emotion. So it can be a negative thing, but it can be a useful thing if you need to get somebody to sort of back away from that for a moment, to disassociate from whatever that anxiety, that pain is, or whatever that feeling is that they perhaps don't want to feel anymore. Metaphors. We will move on to metaphors quite near the end of the module, or quite near the end of the course, but really can be a very good way to perhaps look at a problem, sometimes about when people don't want to face the problem directly, but sometimes some people just think much more metaphorically. I personally find I kind of automatically will create metaphors for myself in certain situations, and not everybody's like that, so it won't work for everybody. It isn't always the right approach for everybody, but it can be very, very effective. So we will be doing a bit of work on metaphors, and there's some really good books out there on metaphors as well that you can create, and they're very good with children actually. If you think about a lot of the stories that children read over the years, they are almost, in a sense, sort of analogies and metaphors, aren't they, of certain situations that help them to understand. So metaphors can be quite a good way forward for people. Every day in every way. Obviously we're using that quite a lot. Again, that's just reinforcing, quite often used at the end of a sort of a really positive session where a client's let go of some negative beliefs and is just trying to reinforce those positive mantras and new beliefs and create that new inner identity for themselves. And it's that idea of every day in every way, you know, you are changing, things are getting better, whatever it may be. And quite often what you'll say after that, and if it's okay with you, my voice will go with you, and in time my voice will turn into your voice, whatever it is that you, or however you want to say that. But that's a very old one, every day in every way, but it's very effective to pop in there at the end. Post-hypnotic suggestions, again, ideas to help the client after the session, which you might integrate into the session towards the end of the session, as a sort of, you know, sort of reinforcing those ideas into their mind of how they might change their behavior, how they may change how they feel. And that's going to change their behavior going forward. So another one there. Double binds. We haven't come to this yet. Double binds, I always knew this one as the alternative close, which is giving them two choices, but actually don't have a choice at all. But in this case, it would be two possibilities, two good possibilities. So getting them to choose between those two good possibilities. And I believe there's triple binds as well. So that's a good one to use. Counsel, which is about negative comments, replacing them with the positive. Very useful if a client was to overhear some unhelpful comments, just a way of getting them to sort of cancel out in their mind and just replace that sort of idea that they've heard or have felt with something more positive. So if you perhaps taken them to a situation where something like that had happened, it would be about that kind of replacing the sort of positive, the negative, sorry, with the positive. Split path, we spoke about a little bit earlier on, very good for smokers, also quite good for weight loss, or sort of anything that is going to create a situation that is going to be very, very negative with a very, very bad outcome for the client, so that you've got that chance to take them down that negative path to show them exactly what will happen, and so they can be balancing the good and the bad. And it's always quite important to make the bad pretty bad, and obviously weigh that and contrast that with what is possible, and what they've got to look forward to and how it can be. So split path or fork path is a very good one, and I personally find I use that one quite a lot. Glove anesthesia, a way of transferring anesthesia around the body. Again, very good for pain relief, or for people that might have a fear of the feeling of an injection or anything like that. And I'm sure there's other ways in which that can be used. Just a feeling that you don't actually want to have anymore. Could possibly use, I would have thought, for something like tinnitus. I haven't used it for that, but could be something that could be used there. Changing very nervous energy into positive energy, and there might be lots of different ways in which you would do that depending on what is important to your client. Can be helpful with just, if somebody's very nervous about a performance, for example, it's actually the idea that you're not actually nervous, you're kind of excited, so make it a very positive thing. So that can be a very sort of good way forward there. The go inside method, again, this is something we will cover just a little bit further on. This is really good for illness in pain, and even can be for feelings as well. I've certainly used it for feelings of anxiety or stress and things like that. But it's that whole idea of kind of taking the client inside their body and visualizing maybe what that might look like, what it might feel like, what color it might be, and how they would like that to be. And actually getting them to use their imagination to, in a sense, change that visually and in feeling. So the go inside method can be, as I said, very, very good for an ache or a pain, but it can be used for emotions as well. Certainly in my experience, it has been. Inner child, I think we all know enough about that one now. Obviously, where you've got your older, more confident self, who's been through lots of different things, being able to go back and sort of process those emotions of the child in you, and help that inner child out. Maybe sort of facing down the bullies, facing down somebody that was very mean to them or unfair. And quite often that will go with further down there, the giving back the feeling, or expressing the unexpressed as well. So those sort of three are quite often used together. And I think, you know, both Heather and I have said that's probably one you're going to use more than anything. It's a very, very regularly used technique. 100% confidence, I think we did that right at the very beginning. Some of you did the confidence script. So that can be a very good one in respect for most situations, really. But again, it depends what you're, you know, how deep is that problem, and where are you in terms of solving that. It might be something to start them off to make them feel a little bit better. It might be something you would use after getting rid of some other issues as well. It might be all they need. So, you know, it really varies, as you know. Changing one small thing today. It's one we sort of suggested in relation to the smoking, and again I've suggested in relation to the weight loss as well. It's about allowing the client to just make a change, a small change. So even if they can't make the full change, so for example with the smoking, if you don't feel they're ready to say goodbye to cigarettes completely by the end of your first discussion, then it'll be about changing one small thing. Or it might be more than just one small thing, but it's about making some progress and making them feel like they are taking steps, if you like, to actually make a change. And then finally, giving back the feeling, really, really useful, as you know. I think you've all used that now. If somebody's been hurt, they've been upset, they've been angered, whatever it is, giving them the chance to give those feelings back to the person that gave them to them. Particularly useful when you've got somebody who's been carrying somebody else's feelings for many years. It might even be a fear that just isn't that client's fear, that they've been carrying on behalf of somebody else, their perpetrator, if you like. And that the whole idea being behind that, to give back that feeling so they understand how they feel. And quite often the feeling that you get from your client is that they feel listened to in some way. They feel like they've, you know, and they'll quite often say things like that, you know, that person will have changed, the person that they're saying it to. And a good way to approach that is how have they changed it, assuming that there has been a change. Very, very powerful one there. So there's 33 sort of techniques that are good to, just as I said, keep, you know, literally take them perhaps from the handbook and have them nearby. They're just a nice little prompt if you need them, just to remind you of all the tools that you do have. Now, as I said, I know that some of these we haven't covered in depth yet, and we will do, but this seemed quite a good time to introduce those to you and kind of revise, if you like, some of those ones that you've already sort of covered and used. So just knowing how much of a toolbox you really are going to have really at the end of this. And I'm sure there's even more that we could add, but these are just what we have at this point. Okay, so that's all our techniques. Anybody got any questions about any of that at the moment? No?
Are we going to get a chance to practice these?
What, all of them at different times? I'm pretty much most of those, yeah. I mean, some of these you're using already, aren't you? Mm-hmm. So, you know, things like giving back the feeling, changing one thing, a small thing every day, that might be that comes into some of your sessions even tomorrow when you do that. The ones that we haven't covered yet, like the Sedona method, the go inside method, those sort of things, yes, you'll definitely get a chance to practice those. So, you know, we try and make it that you get a chance to practice as much as you can. Okay. Any other questions? No? Okay, can I just take a glass of water? Okay, and we'll move on. Is everybody okay? You're all still awake? Okay. Right, so this is a very, very quick one before we move into weight loss. You'll notice this is in your handbooks, autogenic relaxation. Really just to let you know, it's mainly a term that's used by the NHS, and it's actually what we would call the progressive muscle relaxation, which is what you did right at the beginning of the module. So in terms of what Andrew believes, you don't really need to know much more than that. It's really just letting you know that this is the same thing. And there's a little version here that you'll see in your handbook that you can actually have a read of that, and you'll see that's exactly what it is. So it's really just addressing that and just pointing your attention to that and just saying that's really all it is. Okay, so don't need to say too much more about that now. But what we will do is move on to weight loss. Okay, now you will get, well, it's quite likely that you will get quite a lot of weight loss clients. Although it varies, and it seems to go in phases. I had a phase where I was getting loads of them. You know, it seems like every other person was a weight loss client. And it doesn't just seem to be women, it's men and women. And there's a whole host of reasons why people will be coming to you with sort of an eating issue. Sometimes it really will be just as simple as it's been a habit over many years. It might have gone back to childhood where food has been a reward or whatever. It might be very, very simple. It could be something where somebody's really not got that much of a problem, but they just want to stop whatever that habit is. But sometimes you'll get a full-blown sort of eating disorder like bulimia or anorexia or something like that. Now you can help with these things. Sorry, that was my dog. But as I said, it will vary. But not every single person that comes to you for weight loss will have massive issues, but you know that you need to dig beneath. But invariably there will be some. What you're obviously trying to do in relation to this, as with everything really, is to find out what it is they want to do, you know, what's their don't wants and their do wants, and not just give them guidance, if you like, on how to lose weight, because if they wanted that, they'd go to the gym or a personal trainer or Weight Watchers, Slimming World, whatever it is they've done. They're looking for something different from you, because the chances are when people come to us as a hypnotherapist, they've tried all those things and sometimes they've had success. And it's quite important that you find out within your chat what they have tried. But what you want to do is be able to give them something different, if you like. So although we might give them some tips and guidance on what they can do, it's important that we give them just that little bit more, something that's different, to actually, and then digging into their thoughts and beliefs, and find out what it is that's actually stopping them from doing what they actually know how to do. Okay, because there rarely will be somebody that comes to you that doesn't know how to lose weight. They just know that they can't, or they can't actually motivate themselves to do the things that they know they want to do. So sometimes you can do this by simple suggestion, depending on how complex it appears to be. But as you know by now, it's always better if it can be much more bespoke and much more personal. Andrew was sort of saying that he used to always think that everything was about emotional problems, but sometimes it isn't. So it's important not to assume that you always have to go straight in for the analytical regression or whatever. There will be an emotion involved, obviously, and that's what we're trying to get to. But sometimes you might be able to help somebody just by changing their perspective on things without actually having to go too deep. But I'm really not saying that you don't, you know, that you never have to do that. It really will vary. I think it's always safe with any client just never to assume anything. You see how that conversation goes, you question as much as you can, and see what happens, really. Okay, so when you're dealing with people that are sort of trying to lose weight, you've got this law of reversed effect going on. It's almost like the devil and the angel. You know, you've got the devil on one shoulder saying, go on, have it. and the other one saying, no, you really mustn't. And it's literally, it's your will versus your imagination. So if you look on here, you've got, I really want to lose weight and stay slim, but the imagination kicks in and says, yeah, but that looks so delicious and I can't wait to tuck in and feel really good. And if you look at the thought bubble there, the biggest one is the imagination, which is what's driving that person to do something that actually they really don't want to do. So if you look at Kuh's law of reversed effect, it says whenever there's a conflict, the will and the imagination, between the will and the imagination, sorry, the imagination will generally win. Okay, so the harder you try, the more you will fail. And I'm sure you've all had experience of that in various different things in your life, that sometimes you try so hard to do something, but it's when you relax and sort of sit back that things start to change. And this very much happens with eating. So if we look at the idea of the will and the imagination, so a lot of people will tell you in relation to weight loss, getting fit, or any of these things, or giving up any sort of habit, same with smoking, I suppose, and drugs, drink, whatever it is, they'll say, oh, I've got no willpower. They always say they've got no willpower. But in actual fact, it's not about the willpower. The willpower, if you look at it on this diagram here, is going up the steps. It's the imagination that is dragging them down, okay? It's that idea of other things, perhaps beliefs about themselves, values, just giving into something. The imagination just takes over, and that's what actually is stopping the process happening. If you've got the will and the imagination going in the same direction, then everything's different. So your willpower is going in one way, your imagination, your identity, your beliefs, your values, everything is heading in the right direction. And that's what you're aiming to get your client to do, to actually create this type of situation where the will and the imagination are working together. They're not working against each other. And you can see, perhaps, if you look at something like this, how something like parts therapy could be quite useful for this particular thing, because you've got that conflict already, haven't you? Depending on the nature of the issue. So when we talk about the imagination, what is it we really mean? So when you think about what's going on inside with a person in relation to whatever it is, and we're thinking about weight loss here, you've got their self-image there, so how they actually see themselves. And a lot of people that have had a continuing weight problem see themselves as a fat person. They see themselves as overweight, somebody that just never seems to be able to shift that weight. So statements like I'm fat, I'm overweight, and they just become self-fulfilling prophecies, really. It's just the way I am. Yeah, I can't help it. So their self-image is they're just somebody that just can't actually shift that weight. And it then becomes part of their identity. So that's where you can start to see how we really need to try and help them to shift that inner identity so that they can actually head in the right direction. Along with that, we get imagined outcomes. So the idea that, this can be positive or negative. So it could be a positive outcome is, if I get really slim, I'll look more attractive, but a negative to that might be, but that might create another problem, So, I think if you remember back to, I think some of the scenarios we had with the don't want, do want, there were a few people that they wanted to be slim and attractive, but there was this bit in the middle that made them scared that what would happen, perhaps it's not safe. Perhaps it's not safe for me to be slim and attractive. So sometimes there's a fear and anxiety around what that imagined outcome actually might bring. So it's not actually a fear of being slim, it's the outcomes of what that might mean. So we're looking for that missing bit again. Sometimes you've got eating as an emotional response. So emotional eating, you hear a lot of people talk about emotional eating. When they feel a certain way, they'll just eat lots of chocolate. And it makes them feel better at the time, but doesn't make them feel better afterwards. So almost eating to suppress and cover up that emotion. And sometimes that comes or goes back to something that they used to do when they were a child. Perhaps having that lovely big piece of chocolate cake made everything better at that particular time. So that's kind of a trigger to make them do that now. And then you have the probably more simple responses, which are just behavioural, so a bit like just a habit, that they've just got into a habit that whenever they do a certain thing, they do something else. So, you know, if I have a cup of coffee, I always have to have a cake. If I have a chocolate bar in the morning, I always have a chocolate bar in the morning, and then I have an afternoon snack. So it's that, a bit like we talked about with the cigarettes, you know, I have a cigarette and then I have a drink. So it's that conditioned response that is just repetitive behaviour, and in a sense, just a habit. So you've got all of these different things going on in the imagination, which will have an effect on stopping or helping somebody to head in the right direction in terms of actually losing weight. So when the imagination overpowers the willpower, quite often it's things like poor self-image, the fearful outcomes that we just talked about, emotional responses and the conditioned behaviours that pull back down the other way and actually stop them acting the way they want to. So what you actually want to do, as I said, is align it all so it's all going in the same direction. So you've got this individual here that wants to lose weight and reach that successful outcome and everything that comes with that. So to do that, they need to improve their self-image. They need to look at those positive perceived outcomes. You know, it could be just looking absolutely amazing at going to a particular event that they're going to, and feeling that they're healthier, so eating to nourish the body, and then actually just changing that behavior. So everything then is heading in the same direction. So that's what we're actually aiming to achieve when we're helping somebody to lose weight. So we've got a practical program for weight loss. Okay, so I'm going to take you through this in a similar way that we did with the smoking. And as always, it won't exactly go that way with everybody. Really, every client is going to be different. But just taking you through this as it's suggested, so that you can see what we're trying to achieve and sort of how we get there. So, as with any session, lots of listening, lots of questions, and sort of starting off really by asking the client to tell you his story or her story, as we always do, and what they believe their situation is. You're looking to find out from them what it is they want to achieve, but not just a goal that is a one-off goal, like going to a wedding. It might be helpful to have a goal like that, but you'll tend to find that a lot of your clients that come to you will have reached these goals many times before, particularly in the case of somebody who's been a bit of a seesaw dieter. You know, they've been to Weight Watchers and they've lost 3 stone. They've been to Slimming World and they lost 3 stone, but it always goes back on again. So what we're trying to do is to try and put them in a situation where they really are changing their mindset, changing their behavior in a much more permanent way, not just another quick fix. So that's why we need to question as much as we can. So important to know what they've already done, and also what's worked for them in the past. So that gives you sort of some inkling into how their mind works and what's going to work for them. When did that problem begin? You know, perhaps it was something that was triggered by something that happened. I had a situation with a lady recently where her eating started after her father died when she was 12 years old, and there was no comfort, no explanation, nothing. And from that time on, she became an eater, and that became an issue. So every time now when she's in that situation, where she might feel stressed or upset or some anxiety or similar feelings to she felt then, she tends to want to eat. So sometimes it could be some sort of event like that, either in adulthood or childhood, or it could just be it's been a pattern of behaviour through childhood that just needs to be broken. You know, so it can be quite a simple, just that's how it's always been. We just need to sort of change the system really and do a little bit of reprogramming. So all the time you're talking, make sure that, again, using the same, you know, sort of fluid questioning, clean language, all of those things, really, really important to continue with that. And just listen all the time for all of those clues in what they're saying. Make sure you don't give advice, certainly not at this point, but even when you do get to that point where you might give them a few tips, as with the smoking and so on, the advice really has to come from them, because they're going to see the answers as you're talking. Okay, so lots and lots of questions, and just dig into everything, as we always do, so that you know, you're really, really clear on where they are with their sort of eating and what they want and what they don't want, and so on, as always. Again, looking out for statements that clients will state as if that's just it, that's how it is. Statements of fact, you know, I'm always going to be fat, or in this instance here, I'm just too lazy to lose weight. So you might say, well, really, what do you mean lazy? Who told you that? So my boss, I stand up for 8 hours a day and I get tired, and he says I'm lazy. He's the one who comes in late every day. Okay, so you're not lazy, you just get tired, and you're right, relaxing after work rather than going to the gym. Is that right? Yes, that's right. Great. So what would you need to feel in order to be able to go to the gym? What would it what would make it more appealing and more worthwhile? So again, as with any sort of symptom that we're dealing with, your aim is to really try and uncover what's actually holding them back. What are those limiting beliefs that they may have, and quite often in some cases beliefs that just aren't true at all, that they have about themselves and their ability to be able to lose weight, because a lot of this will come out just in the general conversation. So it's about you not always looking for, not always asking that particular question, but identifying it in what they say. Actually picking out those key statements that are really going to help you, to help them. And then the way that really works quite well with weight loss is to use the goal achievement plan. So you may remember quite a few weeks back we looked at the goal achievement plan in relation to something completely different, but this is a really good thing to do in relation to weight loss, because it just kind of ticks all the boxes, if you like, and it can be a really helpful thing to do, particularly if you're working with them over a period of sessions. And quite often weight loss will be happening over a period of sessions. So, you know, you can see the progress and you can work with them on this. And you've got, if you remember, we'll come to a diagram of it in a moment, but in that dream vision section is what is helping them to create what they really, really want. Okay, and it isn't just about what they want in terms of what size they want to be. It's really about what's the intangible benefit, if you like, that they're going to get from losing that weight. So what is it they want to feel like at the end of this? You know, so how's it going to make them feel about themselves? So how do they want to feel about themselves? So if they can go from a size 18 down to a size 12, how's that going to make them feel? And what does that, you know, get them to really visualize what that then is going to be like, and how that's going to make them feel as a person. And in some cases, it can be quite good to get them to actually visualize a particular scene. You know, some people might visualize themselves in that red dress that they haven't been able to get into for 5 years, looking really good at a party or on holiday or out to dinner, something like that. And quite often it's good to get them to imagine themselves in that situation, just describing themselves and how they feel. Again, it's all about the feeling, how they're going to feel. Because although it's a sort of a tangible thing they're trying to get to actually get to a certain size and fitness maybe, the actual benefit is more about feeling, how they're going to feel about themselves. And sometimes with weight loss, it is, you know, there is more behind why that's so important. So get them to really, you know, you want to sort of help them get to those powerful and meaningful feelings and emotions. And we all know that actually the reason is that, you know, that's the reason why they want to change their body shape, because of a certain way that they want to feel. Sometimes it can even be about control. There's so many different core beliefs that can come into wanting to lose weight. It isn't always just straightforward, but it's the feelings and emotions inside that are actually making them want to change in the first place. So that's what you want to focus on, is how do they want to feel, not just how do they want to look, although that might be, come a part of that. So sometimes they don't know what they want exactly, but they do know that they don't want to be how they are, for example. So the do want, don't want works really well. And, there's an example here that you might want to use something that, just a small thing to get them to sort of start getting on the way to where they want to go. So in this case, I want to feel smug because, the arrogant sister is there. So she wants to feel like she's slimmer than her, and that's going to be a motivator for them. So that might be quite a surface way of dealing with it, but it might lead to getting down to the next layer of beliefs. So that can be quite a good way to go. Really important in this dream vision section, though, that the words are their words, because if they repeat backwards and they don't feel to them like they're their words, they're not going to work, as you know. So really help them to create the words of how they want to feel to go into that vision sort of statement, if you like. So, you might think, so you want to feel good, light, happy, but that might not be the words that they would use. So make sure that they choose them. They choose the situations, they choose the images. It's all got to come from them. So just a reminder of what the goal and achievement plan looks like. We'll look at a more complete one in a moment. So you can work with this sort of model. So your dream vision, which is where we're talking now, this is where you're trying to get those sort of, they're almost like positive mantra statements of how they want to be. So you can put those all in there, and then you've got broken down here just as ideas. You might not do it exactly like this, but as ideas that what sort of health they want, what they're going to achieve health-wise, their eating, actions they might take, attitudes they want to have, beliefs and emotions, and the reality and the real identity shift, and all of that feeds into that sort of dream or vision. So it's quite a nice structured way to work through this, really. Something you might want to use to sort of help them to think about what some of those statements might be when you're thinking about what it is they really want to achieve. You could say to the client, if you had a twin who could just step out of your body and sit in that chair over there, what would they say that you needed to do right now to make a difference to your eating and your weight? And that can be a really useful tool to get them to actually see what they really want, and actually sort of get into that belief system, and to get them to give advice, if you like, to themselves. And that helps you to sort of fill in those little boxes of what they need to do. And actually that the twin can be quite a useful technique in other areas as well, to actually say, if you could sort of step outside your body, what advice would you give to you? So it doesn't just have to be weight loss, that could be used in other situations as well. So quite a nice little way, and it seems very simple to say it, but quite often it's a very effective way to work with clients on this sort of thing. When you're working through what their plan is, I think something that's quite nice for a lot of clients is that somebody's working with them on that, because a lot of people that are trying to lose weight feel like they're trying to do it on their own. So it's quite nice that you are doing that with them, working through a specific plan. But it's really, really important that it feels not only achievable, but also feels sustainable, because I'd say a lot of the clients that come to see you about losing weight will have lost weight before, and they will have done many different things before. So this time they want it to be different. This time they want to do something that they know they can achieve, but something they can achieve long term. So it's a change of mindset, it's a change of lifestyle. So it's all of these things that you're trying to help them to achieve, not just a quick fix, something that's just going to get them to lose 3 stone before that wedding or that big event. So you're trying to get them not just to lose that weight, you're trying to get something that's sustainable, something that's going to give them a good feeling about themselves, something that's eventually going to change that inner identity. And that's going to then help to drive the behaviours to get them to do what they need to do. And obviously create more of the good feeling as well. So those stepping stones, they get converted into suggestions. So you're taking the ideas and the action statements from the stepping stone boxes, and you're then converting those into positive statements that the client must agree with and really create. You are just helping them to create those statements. And as I said before, they need to feel that when they read, and you need to feel when they read it, that they're comfortable. Because if they're not comfortable reading it, they don't believe it, and it's not coming from them. So that really needs to be addressed in that way. And they will form the basis of your personalised hypnotic suggestions that you will use with your clients. So it's really important that they're on board with them and they're not in any way resistant to them. Again, just including perhaps, how will you feel after you've eaten and not during. Make sure you chat through the idea of actually reprogramming their mind to focus on how they're going to feel about when they've eaten something rather than how they feel when they're doing it. So quite often when somebody has that cream cake or that chocolate bar or whatever it is, the thing that makes them do it is that immediate quick fix, isn't it? It's that pull of that really lovely, pleasurable sensation that they get. What you need to try and do is get them to focus and project forward, if you like, past that feeling to that feeling they get afterwards. So that feeling of actually just feeling a little bit regretful. And feeling like they really wish they hadn't done it. Quite often an overwhelming guilt, lack of control. You get all sorts of things that people will say, and reminding them that they have a choice. They don't have to have that feeling afterwards. They can change that feeling. So by skipping that pleasure feeling, which doesn't really last for very long, they get a different type of pleasure from actually not getting that horrible, sickly, guilty, regretful feeling that they get afterwards, which will encourage them to make a different choice. So just to say something to them, a little bit like this. So from now on, you're going to discover that more and more your mind is beginning to focus on how you're going to feel after you've eaten something. And if that feeling you feel after you've eaten something fits in with the same feeling as your goal and your vision, then you're going to feel drawn to go ahead. But if that feeling that you feel after you've eaten that something will take away from how you want to feel, then your mind can begin to make those kinds of food much more unappealing, like something that you wish that you could keep at arm's length. So here's just a very sort of, you've got other examples, I believe, in the handbook there, but just an example of what a goal and achievement plan could look like. So it might be this particular person, they want to complete a 5-mile run, they want to go down to a 12 or 14, they want to care about themselves, be able to run upstairs, stay alive, that's quite an important one, and have a good quality years, it says here. And then you can see the stepping stones. Things they might need to do in terms of health would be good nutrition, and you've got the 80-20 rule, so you're not always being 100% good. Allow yourself to fall off the wagon occasionally, and I think that's quite an important thing as well, to not beat themselves up, because that's one of the classic things that gets people to just carry on eating, because they think, well, what's the point? I fell off the wagon anyway, so I may as well carry on. So important for them to say, okay, start right now and just carry on as you were. It's okay. It's okay to sort of have something else sometimes. So they've got reduced sugar, closer to natural food, hot water, just some of the things that they're going to do in relation to the nutrition side. Exercise, they've got 30 minutes to get out of breath, walking and using the stairs. Mindset, they want to make it believable, make it worth it, and feel like they can do it. They've created a mantra here. My name is, let's say, Gail, and I can be fit and healthy and make the right choices. And the emotions in this case, my emotions are separate from my eating. Whatever I am feeling, I will deal with that feeling separately. So it just gives you an idea of what an example of a golden achievement plan might look like. But you've got a couple of other examples in your handbooks as well. So look at those. And again, all of these will be completely different depending on who you're working with. Okay, I'm just going to stop for just a moment there. If you can just bear with me just for a second. If anybody wants to take just a 5-minute drink break, that's absolutely fine. I just need to go and get a glass of water myself. So if you just want to take 5 minutes, just stop sharing just for a minute. Okay. Okay, right. Okay, if you just want to take a break just for 5 minutes, and I'll be back with you in 5. I'm just going to get a glass of water and I shall be right back. Okay, and we'll continue then with the hypnosis. Okay, hopefully you're all there. Just back, just needed a quick glass of water there. Okay, so after the session, you've done lots of chat, you've really sort of understood what the client wants, you've gone through your golden achievement plan, you've put something together that really resonates with your client, you know, lots of words coming from them, statements that they are comfortable with and that you can tell they're comfortable with, and you're then ready to launch into the hypnosis. So really making sure that the client's happy with everything before you move on. So using whichever induction you feel they're going to be, well, you're going to be most comfortable with, or they will be. And of course, the time factor as well depends on how long this takes. This will take longer with some people than it will with others. So you can go through, you know, as I said, any types of things that, any types of induction that you want. The library model is quite a nice one to use for this as a visualization, particularly if you're making it very specific to their eating and their weight and whatever it is that they want to achieve and how they want that to continue to be in the future. And then you use that golden achievement plan to really sort of put together those positive suggestions and mantras, along with any other suggestions that you've gleaned along the way that might be useful for this particular client. So you've got that sort of almost there as a tool for you. And this is something you can give to your client at the end of the session as well, for them to take away and work from. And it means if you're continuing sessions with them, that you can continue to work with that and see, you know, sort of chart their progress with them as well. It gives you a nice structure. Okay. So hypnosis, do that, you do all of the, sort of bring all of that into that. And then at the end of that session, now in some cases, Again, it really depends on the nature of that person's particular eating habits, weight loss, whether it's a habit, whether it's emotional eating. It could be a lot more than that, and we'll come to that in just a moment. But you will invariably find, I think, with most weight loss clients, that it will be done over a series of sessions. So, you know, this is like this will be the basis of your first session to get them going on that weight loss journey. And then as you go along those sessions, you can start to fine tune things. And it depends how, you know, time wise, again, it varies with what this client wants to achieve. But you could time it over that weight loss journey almost, so that you are checking in with them to help them along the way, or it could happen beforehand. It's going to depend what your client's trying to achieve and what's going to work best with them. But any follow-up sessions are really going to be there for you to just fine-tune things and just keep them on track and see what's working for them, what isn't. Andrew suggests that sometimes you might repeat the same hypnosis as you did before. I haven't done that, you know, because usually new things come up, different things that you're dealing with along the way. But, you know, again, it will vary. Each person is different. So what'll be really good as you sort of work with the client over a period of time is that they'll be able to tell you what successes they're having. So they might be finding that they're doing some things differently, but they still need a bit of extra help in other areas. So that's all going to depend again on how that's working for them. Always in every session, you know, don't assume all the work is done in that first session. If it is over a period of sessions, keep looking for any limiting beliefs or any resistance that might be causing them to not progress quite as quickly as they might be hoping to. Again, you know, as I said at the beginning, don't just give them general advice. I mean, because you're supposed to be something different. You're trying to help them to find something that they couldn't find before. So we are offering something a little bit different. Remember to question everything. You know, almost Andrew quite often says, just act stupid, you know, and don't make any assumptions about things, because quite often you're assuming things in your head and they'll say something that completely contrasts with what you're thinking. But what you do want to do, and you know, the more you see your clients in this particular situation, the more you'll really start to understand how they think and what's going on in their mind. And you might find that over, you know, if you're working with a client over a period of sessions, that those stepping stones might be adjusted over time, as will the sort of hypnotic suggestions as well. So, you know, be prepared for that, because quite often that new connections might have come along the way in between seeing you the first time and the next time or the next time. So keep looking all the time for any new information that might help you to help them. Weight loss is a funny one. Sometimes it can be really, really easy. Sometimes it can be really, really challenging. You know, it really depends on what the issue is and what's actually stopping them. So, you know, the aim is, if you're working with them over a period of sessions, to always send them away feeling like they've found something new out, to feel like they're making some progress, and that they've got something new to work with themselves. Okay, now if the actual weight loss itself, as you're working through that session, after that first session you sense that there's something a lot more, it might be that the goal and achievement plan isn't the way to go. It could be that actually you might want to go down the route of more analytical techniques. So, you know, sort of weight loss can be like any other surface symptom. We may go down a different route. So it might be that the goal and achievement plan isn't the right route for every single person that has a problem with eating, particularly if there is very, very strong emotions involved. So you may go down the parts therapy route, which can, as I said, be quite good, because you have quite often got that devil and the angel going on there, and other aspects as well. Free regression, regression to cause, free association, Inner child, NLP, there's so many things, and we haven't got to NLP just yet. Some of you may already be aware of that anyway, but there's different routes you can take. So don't feel like if the client you've got sat in front of you isn't working with this goal and achievement plan, that you can't take another approach, because you've got a big toolbox that's getting bigger and bigger all the time. So there are other routes, and definitely if it is more deep rooted, you might want to go down one of these routes to see if you can just get to what it really is that's causing that problem. Because quite often eating can just be a self-sabotage thing that is much more deeply rooted. But I think what Andrew's really trying to remind us is that it isn't always. So let's not all jump in and assume that it's a really deep emotional issue, because it might not be. But be aware that it could be. So you may have to take that route. Whichever route you do take, whether you do go down the goal and achievement plan or you do use one of the other techniques, it's always going to be about creating that new inner identity and getting that client to let go of any sort of limiting old identities around food and weight, so that they can actually really feel from the inside that they can be that new person that they want to be. If a client believes they're fat, greedy and lazy, they're always going to believe, but I'm always going to go back. I'm always going to, this diet's going to fail like all the rest. So it's really about trying to get rid of that feeling. And sometimes that can come down to some of those core beliefs, like not good enough, not being able to do something, lack of control. There's all these other things. If a client believes they're useless, worthless, and destined to be overweight, that could be much more symptomatic of much more than just being overweight. So that sort of limiting sort of identity will be driving what they do, and then create more sabotage. So it's almost, again, it's that self-fulfilling prophecy. So really, really important we shift that old identity. And if going down the analytical line is the way to do it, then so be it. That might be, in some cases, the way to go. And it is looking out for those limiting identity statements that they make and actually trying to get them to turn them around into much more positive statements. And that's when you really start to feel like, they may believe that or start to believe that. And if you are going down the line of the goal and achievement plan, to build those new ideas of that new identity into that plan, to really help you do that. Now, if you get to the end of your first session with somebody, whether it be going down the goal achievement line plan or whether you're just working with other techniques, you may find that to make that big change, a bit like the giving up smoking, it might be they're not ready today to give up smoking, but they might be ready to reduce how many cigarettes they have. In this case, they might be able to say, right, well, I'm not going to eat biscuits this week, or I'm not going to have a glass of wine with my meal every night, whatever it happens to be. So they might be not ready to let go of that identity that they have, and that they might need to just make a small change. So you go back to that one small thing or one small change that they can change to help them make the difference. And it really also helps them to reinforce the fact that they are making some progress. Because they can make one small change, so they can make a change. They might not be able to make all of those changes, but there's at least something positive they can take away from this, that they're not actually, they might not be able to do all of it today, but they can make a small change, which makes them feel like they can be proud of the fact they're actually achieving something. So examples that Andrew's given us here: pause for 5 seconds before eating, and be mindful about whether you're physically hungry or whether you're actually experiencing a habitual response to something like boredom or avoidance, or maybe just habit. Have 2 glasses of wine instead of 3. Only drink alcohol at weekends. Allow yourself to be hungry at times. Practice stopping when you're full. Now, all of these suggestions, these are all things that perhaps anybody could suggest, but if they can actually feel that they're ready to make even just one of those changes, you can send that client away feeling like they are progressing and they're moving forward in some direction towards that, you know, big goal that they're aiming for. And it also just makes them feel like it is possible. You know, it's breaking down a big thing into smaller tasks, you know, so the stepping stones again. Okay, so some just quickly running through, and some of these we've even touched on tonight when we were looking at all of those different techniques, things that can be really effective when you are working with clients with weight loss. So you've got the goal and achievement plan, which I've talked you through tonight, and which you're going to have a go at with tomorrow. So really helping you to understand exactly what it is that the client wants to achieve and how they want to not just look and what they want to wear, but how they really want to feel. The stop sign that we used for the for giving up cigarettes can be quite good, because, you know, you can almost imagine it in the cupboard each time they go to the cupboard to go and pick up that other biscuit, visualizing that stop sign. So it can be really good for habits in general, the stop sign. One small thing, as we just talked about, just breaking it all down into so many, you know, more smaller tasks, so making it much more achievable in that way. You're not a dustbin, so changing the view of themselves and teaching them to respect themselves and respect their body and what they're doing to themselves. So it's an idea that you could put in there. Regression, obviously, an inner child helps to get to the root of the issue and the emotional weight issue, if indeed that's what it is. And parts therapy, as you know, just inviting different parts of the client's mind to reveal perhaps why they have those weight issues and how they can sort of kind of work that out together and resolve that issue. Positive visualization can be really good with weight loss, almost visualizing themselves looking in the mirror at that person, if you like, that they're going to be at the end of this journey, wearing those clothes that they want to be wearing, feeling confident, everybody looking at them and thinking how good they look and feeling good about themselves, and actually almost visualizing themselves walking into that reflection of themselves and feeling that. So positive visualizations in many different ways with weight loss can work, but that could be quite a nice way to do that. Split path, as we mentioned earlier, really powerful. I've used this quite a lot with weight loss clients, and because there is that sort of health threat for some people, if that's what is a threat for them, you know, remember, somebody might not really believe that they are going to, you know, there is a possibility of them having a heart problem or, you know, something like that related to weight. But if that's one of their fears, you know, if they've perhaps had a mother who had diabetes and died of a heart attack or something like that, that is a real fear possibly for them. So that's something that you could use as part of that split path. To really kind of get that aversion side of where they're going in there. So it can be very, very powerful. And there's all sorts of creative ways that you can make that journey down that not so nice path really unpleasant. And then obviously being very creative the other way to show them what's possible. Anchor, helping them to feel calm and in control, because quite often you will find around eating that there are control issues with people. It is about, you know, sometimes even though people are overeating, they feel like that's the one thing they do have control over, that they can have what they want, even though actually that's sabotaging them. But sometimes it will be around that. So anchors can be good. Control room, we talked about earlier, can be a good way for turning down the hunger, or maybe the feeling that makes them want to eat in the first place. So that could be stress, it could be anxiety, it could be anger. You know, I had a client recently, whenever she was angry, it made her want to eat, and usually the really bad stuff. So, so the control room can be quite a nice way to turn that down, to actually feel them physically turning it down. Post-hypnotic suggestions, hunger check-in, helping the client to really know whether they're really hungry or are they just reaching for something because it's an emotional need. So getting them to sort of check in for that. It looks nice, but I'm not going to eat it because I prefer to look and feel great. That's, oops, gone back, sorry. Hang on, what's happened here? There we go. So that's almost that projecting forward. feeling as well, isn't it? It's that feeling of I don't want to have that feeling I have afterwards. I know it looks nice now and it's going to be really tasty, but actually how am I going to feel after I've done that, or in half an hour's time, or tomorrow when I try and put my jeans on and they won't go, you can't get the zip up. The 80-20 rule, you don't have to be good all of the time. And I think this is a really, really important rule when people are trying to take one step at a time to actually get better, to know that actually it doesn't have to be so fixed. They don't have to get it right all of the time. You know, that just you know, you can have a bad day if you like. Mindful eating, again, a lot of that's the advice that you would get from anybody really. Just pause, eat more slowly, just really enjoy your food, things like that. So that can be really, really good. Actually, a good lesson in mindful eating is getting somebody to eat something that, like a Malteser or something, and get them to eat it really, really slowly. Just notice what it tastes like, and most people will notice that it tastes completely different than they thought. Usually it'll be the nicest Malteser they've ever had. Interestingly, I had a client that did that once and realized that after eating that Malteser, she didn't really like Maltesers. So it doesn't, you know, that worked quite well for her in actual fact. The after feeling technique. So people that overeat generally feel bad physically and emotionally afterwards. So reinforcing that feeling again. And then finally, the virtual gastric band, which probably some of you have heard is, I think that's actually like a franchise. So there is a technique that is sold as a package as the virtual gastric band. But again, you could create a visualization around that, just imagining that actually they physically can't eat anymore and their appetite's been reduced. So there's lots and lots of different techniques that you can use around either weight loss or just weight management. Okay, and sort of finally, really, there's a lot of principles here, a lot of ideas, which will help you to bring about some sort of change. As I said at the beginning, weight loss can be very challenging sometimes, because sometimes you're dealing with people that have had a lifetime of poor eating behaviour, or just, you know, a way of being which, you know, their identity is so strongly that they are an overweight person that will always binge eat and that will always go back to where they were. That can be quite challenging to work with. But there are other times when it's going to be really, really easy. So it could be a one session wonder, or it could be something that actually goes on for a period of months. And if it does happen over a period of months, sometimes if you're working to the goal and achievement plan, that can work really, really well, because you're kind of following them on their weight loss journey as they go. So they're checking in with you almost for support on that journey. So that can be a very good way to work with it. But as I said, with all of these things, it's about managing your expectations. It isn't always a magic wand, and it works exactly as you expect it to, because it won't always. So just be aware, again, everybody's an individual. Everybody's problem is very individual to them, and we all respond to different things. So that doesn't make it easy, I know, but so that's pretty much everything I've got to say on weight loss. So I'm just going to come back and get rid of this and stop sharing. Okay, right. Okay, so we're about 20 to 9 at the moment. Has anybody got any sort of questions that have arisen from that with the weight loss? My dog has, clearly. So
yeah, Debbie, you know, if you were just doing the goal achievement plan,
yeah,
how long would you leave it from, like the first session and another one? Then would you give them a chance to improve it and see?
Sorry, can you say that again, Angie? Sorry, Pepper was.
How much gap would you leave between the first, if it was just purely, you knew it was just going to maybe be just a goal achievement plan?
Right. Okay.
Emotions. how long would you leave it between like the first session and another? Would you give them a chance to maybe start using it and lose weight, or do you know what I mean, or what would you do?
There's no rule on that. I personally, I mean, I have worked with a few clients on that where we've been doing it over a period of time, and it's sort of like anything from 2 weekly to a month, I would say, because you don't really want to see a client every week necessarily on that, because it's not giving them much time to actually make some of those changes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what's your view on that, Heather?
I'd ask my client.
Sorry.
I'd ask the client.
Yeah.
Negotiate it. See what they think.
I mean,
Depends if it's an emotional thing, then you might want to be seeing them every week. If it's just more they've got to do it and you're not going to lose that much in a week and you might feel a bit disheartened, then you might give them 2 weeks and then they might have a bigger loss. So it's negotiable.
Yeah, and I think I did something a couple of years ago where I was doing something where I was working with a nutritionist and a sports scientist. So they were helping them on those things. I was helping them with the mindset. So that was quite a nice way to go. If you've got all of those skills, that's really good, because you can help them on all of those avenues. But that way, I was kind of checking in with them monthly with the mindset stuff. But as Heather said, if it's an emotional thing, that might be different. You might want to work on that a little bit quicker. But it is put it to the client and their money as well. They might not be able to afford to come every week. So, but good question. That any other questions on that for weight loss?
Yeah, I had a question.
Yeah.
I know I've heard some people talk about not calling it weight loss because the whole idea of loss is not a good psychological word.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point, actually. I mean, weight management, a lot of people say, it can have negative connotations, can't it? I think the whole idea around weight loss sometimes has negative connotations, doesn't it?
Mm.
I think it's you don't hear of people coming for weight gain, do you? But
reduce weight.
Pardon?
Reduce weight.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's all sorts. I mean, I think one of the words I used was it was, as you use with anything in this, it's about transformation. So you're going to transform. You're going to change, rather than it's about weight loss, because invariably, a lot of the time, it is about a feeling. As I said, they want to feel a certain way. And you will find sometimes that clients, they feel that if they lose this weight and they get to that size, whatever, that's somehow going to change everything else. And that's where we step in sometimes. And it's about that emotion underneath that's actually the issue. The weight is just something else, isn't it, that becomes a problem. So, but yeah, that's any good ideas around that would be good on words that we could use, I think, because I agree, weight loss, it does seem it feels like a negative thing, doesn't it, sometimes? Definitely. Anybody else got any thoughts on that, sort of the idea of what else you could use for that?
Other hypnotherapists, or some other hypnotherapists, say reduce weight just because they think that the lose or loss is negative. But
I think management's quite good, weight management, because actually, not everybody wants to be tiny. It's not all about that, is it? And weight management could also cover somebody who's not gaining weight. So it could be either way.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's a very good point that it can be very negative. Any other thoughts or questions around dealing with weight loss?
Debbie, do you have any specific scripts that you would use for that? Like which, any specific scripts you would use for the weight loss?
The weight loss, I don't think we've got a specific one, have we, in the handbook? Now, there are quite a lot of different ones out there, but I mean, really, your script is going to come from your client, isn't it, as to what they want, really? Because you can say a lot of general stuff, but anybody can do that. You can, give them a lot of, you're going to do this and you're going to be mindful and all the rest of it, but that might not be their issue. So I think if you're working with a client over a period of time, certainly when I've done this, I've ended up writing specific scripts for them based on what they've told me and what I know is important to them. But there are lots of general ones that you can look at and adapt if you want to. But I don't think there is, Heather, is there? There isn't anything that's a specific one in there. There is a place that some people signed up to, Hypnotic World, I think it is, that has a lot of scripts that are pretty cheap, but you can look at those and you can adapt them to suit yourself. So that's a good way to start, to just adapt them.
Isn't that one the split? You know,
you could use that.
That seems quite good, isn't it?
Yeah.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, no, that for me has worked quite well with weight loss. Because you can literally take them down that path of all their deepest fears. And I know I had somebody once, and that literally what they were walking in had turned into fat. It was all quite disgusting, but it is quite an effective one. So I think the split path's as good for that as it is for smoking, definitely, depending on where you are with that. And any illness, actually, you know, that where somebody's doing something that is causing a problem. So drinking, drugs, that sort of thing, it can be a really good one to use.
Debbie, do clients ever ask you how much weight they can expect to lose, say on a weekly basis or things like that? You know how people ask that when they're going to a slimming club or something?
Yeah, it's not our remit. We don't get involved with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think with that sort of thing, invariably most weight loss clients will have been to Slimming World. They will have been to Weight Watchers. They've done all of these things, so they know what to do and they know how it works. But it doesn't work because it doesn't work in the long term. So I would keep very much out of that, because, you know, it's a bit like if they want advice from a dietitian or somebody at a gym, they will give them that advice. We're there to help them do what they actually already know how to do, really, to help increase their motivation.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
Oh,
Yeah, it's all right.
is there a session that we can watch on this?
Yes, there's one. I think there's one on the webinar. There's a webinar, sorry, on the members area. I'm pretty certain there's probably a couple there, actually.
So that's not a client session though, is that
no, that's Andrew.
a webinar?
No, not a webinar, sorry, a client session, that's what I mean.
Oh, there is a client session on it.
Yeah, there's a client, I'm pretty certain there's a client session on there, so it'd be worth watching that and seeing. I think I might have actually I might have suggested that. I think in the handbook it might suggest which one you look at there, but if you go onto the members area, you'll see there is a weight loss one there, at least one, there may be more. So that'd be a good one to watch. And I don't know if he's used the golden, I can't remember how he's approached that one, actually. But yeah, if you get a chance, I mean, what we're going to suggest for tomorrow is to try and work with each other. Not necessarily weight loss if we don't have anybody that wants to lose weight, but to use the goal and achievement plan to actually work through something that somebody wants to change. Because we remember we did that right at the beginning. It was more, I think, in relation to where you wanted to be with this, wasn't it? With the hypnotherapy and so on, moving on. But to use it with something like a habit, or if there is somebody that wants to do something in relation to weight management, it could be used. But that's what we're going to suggest for tomorrow. Is there anybody that anybody that does want to lose weight or wants to manage their weight, should I say?
I do, yeah.
Okay, so I mean, Heather, you could group. So can you just put hands up again? So how many people would be interested in doing that tomorrow? So it's 1, 2.
I can't come tomorrow.
Yeah, well, you can't come tomorrow.
No, I don't.
No, but I would do it if someone wants to do it on a Friday or something. Then I'd be up for that. Be fine.
I mean, it doesn't have to be a massive, I need to lose, I want to lose loads of weight. It could be just a habit you've got. I mean, I know, as I say, Andrew always uses the example of pinching chocolate buttons every time he goes past the kitchen or something, where his wife works. It could just be a habit that you just don't want to do. It could be you have one too many glasses of wine in the evening and you'd rather you had less, or something like that. So it could be something like that. But if you could let Heather know, if you're somebody that would like to do that, then that will help us organise it tomorrow night, if that's okay.
Mm.
'Cause,
Some-
yeah, it'd just be quite handy to actually observe, because there's so much in it, isn't there? I don't know, for me, I just find it really quite helpful to observe a session before I actually do one.
Mm.
Right. Okay. I mean, there isn't. I don't think there is one that uses the. I'm not sure if it uses the Golden Achievement Plan, the one that's in the members area. I'm not actually sure. I'll have a chat with him about it.
What about if you or Heather did it on, say, if whoever said they wanted to lose weight? What if one of you did it as a practical?
You dropping it? Okay. Well, who actually wanted to do that? Who would like? Who would be volunteer for something like that if we were able to do it?
Would that be tomorrow?
It would have to be tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless, I mean, because it's not going to be much useful. It's not going to be much use to you otherwise, is it?
No.
Until later.
I would. I'd volunteer if you needed someone.
So Bryony would volunteer. Okay, look, Heather and I'll have a chat about it then, and we could get in touch with you, Bryony.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, okay, all right. Okay, any other questions before we go?
I did have a question actually. Just wondering if you'd used, I don't know what the going inside method is yet because we've not been through it, but I imagine it's maybe something like that. But have you ever used sort of a going inside method to get the body to function better? Maybe if someone's maybe got a condition that they believe is affecting their ability to lose weight, something like not diabetes, but something like polycystic ovaries or something where their enzymes aren't functioning properly. You know, have you sort of heard of evidence where you've used visualization to sort of go in and really get them inside the physical parts of the body and get that kind of working? Because I've heard, proper scientific reports of things like muscle gain being made, purely by thought and imagination, with control groups. And I just wondered if there's any evidence of the same happening here.
You can do it with other things. I mean, I haven't done it with weight actually, and it's a good point actually. I've done it with things like IBS and tinnitus. It can work with that sort of thing as well. So I guess there's no reason why not. I don't know what the research on that is, to be honest. But it's actually possibly a very good technique to try. So, but I don't know what the evidence on that. Have you heard anything on that, Heather?
No, when we get to module 12 and we do pain, and you'll find out with epigenetics what they've been learning, how much control that how you think actually affects how your individual cells work. What switches on and what switches off. It used to be considered that your genes, this are your genes and these are what you've got, but actually now they're coming to think actually the polypeptides, the messenger cells can actually dictate what switches on and what switches off within the gene system. And so you'll get to find that, and then you suddenly think, wow, possibilities are endless. If you could actually just get on board with that and start doing that and really go for that. I mean, I've got a book that's called Cured, and it's all about people who've had strokes and they've done that, and all the brain things, and how the brain is not as set as you think. There is a lot of plasticity in the brain, and just by using your thoughts and how you are, you can start to change the messages that go down around your body and stuff. And if you actually, it's very exciting. You just suddenly think, wow.
I mean, I don't know if you've read Joe Dispenza and Bruce Lipton, because again, there's lots of stuff all around the same sort of thing, really. I mean, I think Joe Dispenza, he actually broke his back, and he was a psychiatrist, and he was all very scientific. Didn't believe in all the spiritual stuff, and didn't believe in all of this sort of stuff. And he actually, with the power of his own mind, cured all of that. Yeah.
Oh, he was a wasn't he a chiropractor? And he visualized his
His-
whole body, like all the different you know, like bones, yeah, all the like coming to, you know, being repaired, you know, every day.
Yeah, it's very interesting. He's written about 3
Yeah.
books, I think. You Are the Placebo, and we'll get to all of the placebo stuff soon as well. But yeah, if you're interested in that, Joe Dispenza, and also The Biology of Belief, Bruce Lipton is also another good one. And that talks a lot about epigenetics that Heather was talking about as well. So yeah, so I think actually what you're saying, Nicola, is possible. It's just that we haven't sort of said, yes, definitely you can do that. And I think with a lot of this, we don't give guarantees, really. But I don't see any reason why that couldn't be used based on what we are beginning to know. So
I've seen videos of Marisa Peer doing it as well.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, she does it to people who they've been born a certain way, and according to the videos, she has miraculous results.
Right. It's very impressive.
What were those 2 books, please?
The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton. What was the one you said, Heather? Cured, wasn't it? Who was that by?
It's in the resource. It's in the resources on the members' website under the books. Cured is in that list.
And
there's another one about healing back pain, which is good, and just puts that how a lot of back pain, muscle pain, neck pain is connected with emotions. And I've just been reading a book that's all about some of the traumas you go through life and how your body stores trauma.
Emotional code, isn't it?
No, this is
the
body keeps the score.
The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk.
Yeah.
That's a brilliant book.
So yeah, I've just been sort of reading that and trying to let go of some of the trauma from my body using chakra chants and stuff like that. Very powerful.
Using what?
Chakra chants. Chakra chants. By Jonathan Goodman. Actually, at the weekend, I had an ab reaction that lasted over an hour.
Really?
It kind of freaked me out. I'm going, oh my goodness. Yes, that was just the body just releasing stuff and getting rid of stuff. It was okay. I think it'll be a few days, weeks before I listen to the chakra chants again.
Oh dear. Perhaps I won't read that one just now then.
The sound healing, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But yes, that was very powerful.
How do you listen to them if you're reading a book?
I've got Amazon Prime, so I have Amazon Music, and Jonathan Goodman's chakra chants are on the streaming bit that's free with my Amazon Prime subscription.
I didn't know you could do that.
You can buy the CD through Amazon.
Yeah, I've accidentally signed up to audiobooks a couple of times.
Well, I signed up once to listen to Andrew read his book, and then I've cancelled it after the 30 days because I think I just don't do I like to read. I like books in my hand that I read.
Has anybody listened to Andrew's book?
I haven't listened to it. No, I've read it, but
I just read it.
Yeah, I've got it on Audible.
All right. Yes, right.
Is that good?
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
Well, it's the book. It's just him reading it.
It's Andrew reading it, is it?
Yeah, it's Andrew reading it.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Good.
Right.
Heather.
Oh, sorry.
I have a question. Well, it's not related to this, but you know when Andrew wrote the book and then he had that kind of 60-day transformation thing.
Yeah.
That has he finished that yet?
I think we're up to day 20.
Oh, right. Has he done up to day 20? Okay.
I think we're up to day 20.
Okay.
Something like that. Okay, before we all hack off.
Yeah.
While you've all been listening to Deborah, I've been sending an email to Andrew Blakeway, who's looking to come back and join us. He would be very interested in catching up the practice. So for those of you who come on a Monday, would it be okay if we backed up a couple of modules to pick up Andrew? It means you get to practice a bit, because we're fairly close now. And we're on Inner Child, so we're fairly close. We might just back up to Regression to Happy Place. Something like, is that okay with all you guys? I'm hoping to talk to him or have a Zoom meeting with him at the end of the week. He's self-isolating at the moment, so it's going to be towards the end of the week when he'll get back home. So we'll chat it through. But yeah, if the rest of you guys are okay, just backing up a few modules, is that okay? Cool.
Okay, right. Everybody ready to go now?
Debbie, so what are we going to do tomorrow? You know, the goal and achievement plan.
Yeah.
What's the goal going to be?
The goal is whatever they want it to be. So that's what you're trying to work out, what it is.
It doesn't have to be weight.
Pardon?
It doesn't have to be weight.
No, because I mean, not everybody you work with is going to be that. So it might be something else, you know.
Thanks.
So, but no, that's fine. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let you go to do whatever you're going to do now, and I'll see you tomorrow. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye then.